Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're going to try this again. I'm going to do a speed recording of this. I don't know what's going on with my Wi-Fi. I don't know if it was YouTube. I don't know if it was LinkedIn. I attempted to do an episode just now on LinkedIn. I got about 35 minutes into it and been cut out about 7 times. I don't know what y'all got. I don't know what you didn't get. That was crappy. I'm not okay with that. That is not what the show is about. And so I'm redoing it right now. And then I'm going to go erase what I've got out there and put this up there instead. So let's get into what tonight's is about. Let me throw this banner out there. Actually, it's not even wanting to let me come up with banners. So you know what? We won't worry with the banner. I don't care. How about that? Tonight is Eldorado, a lost haven. Eldorado, everything the Nazis hate, is a Netflix documentary that explores the vibrant LGBTQ community that thrived in 1920s Berlin, particularly in the Eldorado nightclub. The Eldorado was a glittery nightclub that became a haven for the LGBT communities during this time. The documentary is brimful of compelling stories, chilling parallels to today's America, and spirited reenactments of what nights at the Eldorado must have been like. The film has received positive reviews, with critics praising its use of archival material, expert interviews, and personal stories. It has been described as a concise, deftly told documentary that uses the Eldorado as a launching pad into a broader story about being gay in Nazi Germany. The reenactments are strikingly lit and acted, bringing the scene to life and enhancing the specificity of the time and place. The documentary also highlights the resilience of the LGBT community and the importance of remembering and learning from its history. It serves as a reminder of the freedoms lost and the oppression faced by LGBTQ plus community under the Nazi regime. So the first topic out of the documentary that I'm picking out is trans women and their transition surgeries. The documentary, Eldorado, Everything the Nazis Hate, highlights the stories of 3 trans women who were among the first to receive gender confirmation surgery at Magnus Hirschfeld's Institute for Sexual Science. These women, 2 of which, Charlotte and Tony Ebel, were regulars at the Eldorado nightclub and pioneers in the trans community. The third actually worked at the Institute, and it's thought that when it was ransacked during the Nazi regime, that she was either captured and possibly killed then, or maybe sent off to a concentration camp. Really, they're not sure what happened to the third. Charlotta and Tony met one another about a decade apart. Tony was the older. She left a bad marriage and was kind of coming out as a trans woman. Charlotta had been living this life for a while, and kind of helped Tony navigate it. They develop a relationship and are together for over a decade before they wound up splitting because of things that happened within the Holocaust. Tony winds up staying as an artist, and Charlotta comes to the U.S. But they were 2 of the first trans women. In fact, when the Eldorado is closed, when they're going after gay men, the Nazis are, these 3 women still feel like they're very safe because they've transitioned. And because the 1920s Berlin was just a very different place, they felt they still had this freedom to do so. 1920s Berlin looks similar to what we look like in a way now. There was more freedom. There was more freedom amongst women, including being able to wear pants. They didn't necessarily have to be homemakers. There was just a lot more freedom. Now, the problem with that was in rural parts of Germany and really anywhere else in the world, that's not what was the norm. They were still very family-oriented structures, and gay and lesbian, much less trans, really, really was something that they were inflexible and rigid against. And what they were seeing happening within the cities of Berlin seemed like chaos to them. And so there was pushback. But at the same time, for the LGBT community, there was this thriving element, this club that they felt safe. There were lots and lots of gay clubs at the time. And this particular club, the Eldorado, was a haven for people, whether they were exploring being trans, whether they were exploring being lesbian, being non-conforming, being gay, homosexual, whatever it was. The film has received positive reviews. Again, we've already covered that. I'm sorry. Okay, so now some of the higher ranks of the Nazis were gay. Ernst Röhm, a prominent Nazi known for his homosexuality, was Hitler's right-hand man and head of the SA. Now that stands for like Sturmlich, I can't even pronounce it, I'm not going to try to. Sorry. A Nazi paramilitary wing. Despite the Nazis' regime increasing efforts to eradicate homosexuality, Röhm frequented Eldorado and led the SA at the same time. Now, the SA, also known as stormtroopers or brown shirts, were established in 1921 by Ernst Röhm. The SA played a significant role in the early days of the Nazi Party, disrupting the meetings of rival political groups and intimidating opponents. However, it soon expanded its activities to include street fighting and intimidation of opponents, and it grew rapidly inside, reaching over 3 million members by the mid-1930s. The SS, on the other hand, was established in 1925 as a smaller elite organization tasked with providing personal protections for Hitler and other top Nazi leaders. The SA was considered tainted by homophobic influence after a while and was eventually absorbed by the SS under, I believe it's Himmler, something like that. So paragraph 175 was a German statute that criminalized sexual relationships between men. During the Nazi period, the police arrested about 100,000 men for allegedly violating this statute. Approximately 50% of these men were convicted. In some cases, this led to their imprisonment in concentration camps. Paragraph 175 remained a part of German criminal codes in various forms until 1994. The Nazis revised paragraph 175 in 1935 to make it broader and harsher. It was one of the main tools that the Nazis used to persecute gay men and men accused of sexual relations with other men. Paragraph 175 was a German statute that criminalized sexual relationships between men. However, it did not criminalize or even recognize female homosexuality. Therefore, women were not convicted under this law. However, it's important to note that while paragraph 175 did not criminalize sexual relations between women, women in Nazi Germany who were perceived as non-conforming, including lesbian, still faced persecution and discrimination. Before the pogroms, before some of the first roundups, they had people, citizens, regular German citizens. So people, like if you left your blinds, your curtains open, and you were doing anything improper, your neighbors ratted on you. If you were a woman and wore pants, and I told you that in the 1920s, this area of Berlin was more forward thinking. The press was freer. People were freer to think and speak. So women were wearing pants. And so now, when neighbors see people wearing pants, they're calling and reporting that as lesbianism. Do we see any correlation between today and the gender, the bans against people being able to go into a bathroom that aligns with their gender identity and people being able to call the police? You see the same? Targeting? Okay, so where we were. Women. The Nazis did not have an official law or policy prohibiting sexual relationships between women, unlike the case of gay men who were prosecuted under paragraph 175 of the German Criminal Code. However, beginning in 1933, the Nazi regime harassed and destroyed lesbian communities and networks that had developed under the Weimar Republic from 1918 to 1933, creating a climate of restriction and fear for many lesbians. In some instances, especially those who were working class, they were imprisoned or sent to concentration camps. They were often listed as asocial or political prisoners. It also is important to note that Jewish lesbians largely faced Nazi persecution because of them being Jewish, not actually due to their gender identity. That was a second factor. In some instances, that's the same thing. Ravensbrück was Nazi Germany's largest female-only camp, and more than 120,000 women from all over Europe were imprisoned there. Many were resistance fighters or political opponents. Others were deemed unfit for Nazi society: Jews, lesbians, sex workers, and homeless women. The documentary features another story of Gottfried von Kremm, Baron Gottfried von Kremm. He's a renowned German tennis player and his relationship with Vanessa Erbst. Now, Gottfried Kremm at the time was considered to be like one of the world's best tennis players, and had certain things not happened in his life, may have gone on and be considered like one of the greatest tennis legends today. Gottfried von Kremm was the pride of German tennis: handsome, blonde, blue-eyed, and the #1 ranked player in the world in 1937. He was also a bohemian spirit who had a passionate homosexual relationship with Vanessa Erbst, a Galician Jewish actor who fled Germany in 1936. Now, Kremm and his wife, Lisa, Gottfried and Lisa, were married and visited Eldorado quite a bit. And they recognized that, again, here was this freedom in the society of people being able to explore their gender expression, their sexual expression, their gender identity. And in a short amount of time, it became apparent that Kremm was interested in, um, uh, again, Vanessa Erbst, a trans woman. And his wife was open to this, was okay. There wasn't that the three of them shared a relationship as far as sexual. They didn't, but they had a relationship together. Gottfried and his wife, very much, Lisa, trusted each other implicitly. So Gottfried was exploring this dynamic with Vanessa, and Lisa was expressing or exploring her lesbianism. She had a few different lovers during the same period. Again, they both were very open with it, with one another, a very marriage, if you will. And that was, the right was willing to look the other way about Kremm and his homosexuality, as long as he played the good Aaron and kept winning. However, as the Nazis rose to power and began enforcing paragraph 175, which criminalized homosexuality, Kremm's position became increasingly precarious. The film reveals what happened to Gottfried and Vanessa as the Nazis rose to power and paragraph 175 was enforced. So part of what winds up happening is Gottfried, Vanessa is again Jewish, and it's very obvious that Vanessa needs to figure out a way to get somewhere that's safe. And so Gottfried starts saving up his winnings from his tennis tournaments to pay for a way for Vanessa to get out. And in 1936 is able to get Vanessa out. Eventually, Gottfried is arrested for homosexuality, and he's charged under 175, and he's held. And during his trial, which it's like 5 years before the trial, and so Vanessa comes back to be a part of the trial. And it really doesn't go into what happens to Vanessa from there. Gottfried tries to have, like a lot of people try to have this expunged from their record, partially because as a tennis player, he can't go to other countries and perform in higher tournaments without a visa. And this conviction is keeping him from being able to apply for a visa. So he's not allowed to go out and play big tournaments anymore. Pretty much is what happens as punishment for this. Eventually, Lisa and he divorce as well. Sorry, I need to catch up with my. Yeah. Okay. The ratio of the gay community by the Nazi regime. The Nazi regime carried out a campaign against male homosexuality and persecuted gay men between 1933 and 1945. As part of this campaign, the Nazi regime closed gay bars and meeting places, dissolved gay associations, and shuttered gay presses. During the Nazi era, between 5,000 and 15,000 men were imprisoned in concentration camps as homosexual offenders. Most were subjected to the worst brutal treatments, and most lost their lives. The German parliament voted in 2017, 7 years ago, to overturn post-war convictions under the now defunct section of 175 of the Penal Code. a law banning sex between men dating from 1871 that was strengthened by the Nazis in 1935. It's difficult to determine the exact number of people murdered due to their gender identity being outside the false binary during the Nazi regime. However, it's estimated that between 5 and 15,000 men were imprisoned in concentration camps as homosexual offenders, and the death rate among this group was significantly higher than most other groups. This suggests a significant number of individuals may have been murdered due to their gender identity. Now, the Institute for Sexual Science and Magnus Hirschfeld. Magnus Hirschfeld, okay, so the Institute for Sexual Science was founded by Magnus in 1919. It was a pioneering institution in the field of sexual science located in Berlin. It was the first of its kind in the world. Magnus was a homosexual, not an open homosexual, but he was a homosexual. And also, like Rum, he frequented Eldorado. Number one, to be able to offer services for those within the club that were frequenting there, but also to study them. Hirschfeld, a sexologist and sexual reformer, opened the institute with the aim of establishing sexual science. For Berlin residents, it was known as an institution providing counseling and treatment for physical and psychological sexual disorders, as well as for sexual transitions, Hirschfeld's term for homosexual, transvestites, and hermaphrodites. The institute soon became a sought-after address for local and foreign scientists, academics, and politicians as well. The institute housed the main offices of both the Scientific Humanitarian Committee, the first homosexual organization, and the World League for Sexual Reform. More than 40 people worked at the institute in many different fields: research, sexual counseling, treatment of venereal diseases, and public sex education. However, with the rise of the Nazi regime, the institute was targeted due to its work and the communities it served. It was plundered and shut down by the Nazis in 1933. The institute's buildings in Berlin were later destroyed by bombing in 1943. Despite these attempts to erase Hirschfeld's name and legacy, his scientific methods had an enduring effect on sexual science, particularly in the United States. Some of the former collaborators of the institute continued their work in the U.S., and Hirschfeld's studies on transsexuality were further developed by his friend and colleague Harry Benjamin here. Others, such as Walter Grothman and Arthur Weil, continued their work in the U.S. as well. Hirschfeld himself had visited the States in 1892 and in 1931 and impacted local scientists. Scientists like Alfred Kinsey employed the technique of questionnaires developed by Hirschfeld between 1899 and 1925 during his research into sexual behavior of women and men in the U.S. These contributions helped lay the foundations for modern understanding of gender and sexuality, and his legacy continues to influence the fields of sexual sciences today. Despite the destruction of his institute by the Nazis, Hirschfeld's name and legacy endure, underscoring the importance of his pioneering work. Now, let's talk about that erasure, shall we? The Institute for Sexual Science was a beacon of hope and progress in the field of sexual science, but it became a target for the Nazi regime due to its work with the communities it served. In May of 1933, the institute was raided by the Nazi-affiliated German Student Union. The contents of the institute's library and archive were publicly burned on May 10th as part of the Nazis' first ever public mass book burning. This event was part of an action against the un-German spirit proposed by the Nazi German Student Association. Does that sound to anybody out there? Does that sound familiar? Action against the un-German spirit. Does that kind of sound like what they're trying to say now, that it's unpatriotic? Trans people are unpatriotic, that it goes against our nation? Do you recognize this? Because you should. They're using the same playbook to instill fear. Thousands of documents, books, and photographs were lost in the fire. These materials represented invaluable records of the LGBTQ community's history and the pioneering work done at the Institute. The destruction of these records was a deliberate attempt by the Nazis to erase the existence of diverse gender identities and sexual orientation. This is exactly the reason why we're being told you're seeing the laws in schools being formed about where you can't talk about sexual or gender identity because that's considered grooming. It's this same rhetoric, right? It's the same. We want to erase that they even exist because then it can't spread. That's the belief of misinformation that's being instilled with this. The burning of the Institute's records was not just an act of censorship, it was a symbolic annihilation of the LGBT community and the scientific understanding of human sexuality. It marked the beginning of the Nazis' brutal campaign against the LGBTQ plus community, which would lead to further persecution and atrocities. The between the attempts to erase history during the Nazi regime and the current wave of anti-trans policies in the US are both striking and deeply concerning. In the 2023-2024 congressional session, an unprecedented number of anti-trans bills have been introduced across the US. These bills seek to block trans people from receiving basic health care, education, legal recognition, and the right to publicly exist. In 2023 alone, 37 bills were introduced at the federal level across categories like healthcare, student athletics, the military, incarceration, and education. In 2024, we're already tracking 550 bills. Just as the Nazis sought to erase the existence of diverse gender identities by burning the records of the Institute for Sexual Science, these bills represent an attempt to erase the existence and rights of trans individuals through legislation. They seek to deny trans people their rights, their identities, their visibility, which all stem from a lack of understanding and awareness about trans identities, just as it was 100 years ago. However, just as the communities resisted and survived during the Nazi regime, so too are they resisting these oppressive policies today. Activists, allies, and organizations are fighting against these bills, advocating for the rights of trans individuals, and working to ensure that this part of history does not repeat itself. That's part of the reason why Jenni and I do this work. And because I had stopped the other recording, let me, I guess, kind of go back. Amber, she, her pronouns. Really sorry I didn't introduce this correctly at all. This is TransParents. Jenni unexpectedly could not be here tonight. So I was doing it on my own, and we just kept glitching so much trying to do the live that I finally just stopped it. I think it cut me out at a good 7 times. I'm going to go erase the one that was doing live on LinkedIn and on YouTube, and this will be the replacement video that I put there in its place. I do know that Jeffrey was present in the audience and Annie was present in the audience. I think Damien may have been messaging me and he was having difficulty with it, and it could have been because it kept kicking me out of StreamYard. I'm not sure if that was something going on with my internet or if it was just StreamYard at the time. I'm not sure. So far in this, I've not, or this, yeah, this recording, I've not had an issue yet. I am kind of speeding through it a little bit quicker though for that reason, so they'll hopefully mess that up, or it doesn't cut me out and mess up this recording. And I'm going to upload it and put this information out there. I may have to like take all the resources on the event that I posted and like move it to this one. I'm not exactly sure how I will do that, but this will be out there. So really sorry, because I'm pretty much almost at the end of tonight's episode, the information that I had here. But I really just wanted to speak to, like, we really don't want to repeat history. And it's amazing to look at how far the influence this homoerotic was going on within the SA, which was one of the branches of paramilitary wing underneath the Nazi regime. And in fact, it got so bad, so brutal, that it was considered homoerotic, that it was influencing the soldiers. And that's actually why Ernst Rump was killed. He was arrested and brought in, and they pretty much gave him a gun and said, you have the choice. It would be best if you killed yourself. And after about 10 minutes, when he refused, two soldiers, SS soldiers, shoulders. Two SS soldiers came in and shot him and killed him. Um, and I believe that was under Hemmer's order. Again, Hemmer was in charge of the SS. Ernst was in charge of the SA. And after that, the SA is absorbed into the SS. And it becomes about about 3.5 million, maybe 4.5 million strong, I think, by that point in time. So yeah, just as like people were resisting back then, we got people resisting now. That's why Jenni and I are out here talking about it. That's why we're trying to unpack some of the misinformation, the disinformation that gets put out there. A lot of the talking points, a lot of the fear that's driven is driven behind misinformation. And it's projected out there like it's truth, and it's not. Very much like the Nazis put out there that this was all truth and this was abysmal and we have to eradicate that. That wasn't the truth. They wanted order, wanted to call the shots. Like I said, when they started going in and actually beginning to collect people, they had German residents who were ordered. They saw something weird going on in his bedroom because the curtains weren't closed. Then to call and inform Secret Service about them. If or not Secret Service, but well, yeah, SS about them. If you had someone, for instance, I told you that the freedom of press was more open during this period of time. Women could dress more, like with pants and so forth. If women were seen in pants, they were reported as lesbians and picked up and put in concentration camps because they were wearing pants. Um, if we erase history, we don't learn from those past mistakes, right? And we all know that adage that if you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat those same mistakes. And we're beginning to see some of that. You see that in the misinformation that's put out there every day. Jenni and I tackled trans grooming last week. There's not a single case. There's not a single case in the US of anyone being convicted of grooming anyone to becoming trans. Not parents, not teachers, not trans people. No one has been charged with this ever. And how many laws are out there? How much rhetoric do you hear about people who are talking about trans grooming? Is misinformation. And it's as bad today as it was with the Nazi era, as far as how much misinformation is being pumped out there as the truth. That's not the truth. This is science that was created over 100 years ago. We have certain members, lawmakers now, pieces of our media, journalism who want to say that that the trans community is something that's brand new, that they've just emerged in like the last 8 years. Guys, we have recorded documents back to the Copper Age, 3,000 years ago, of trans people. That's written documentation. It's not new. The erasure of this community is not new. The misinformation to stoke fear is not new. What I really want you to see, pay really close attention here to these next few words, are the comparisons that can be made between the Nazi regime and what our politicians are doing to certain communities here in the US now. And it's going on in other countries too. But I'm in the US, so I'm talking about the US. That's what affects my child, my adult trans child, Jenni's adult trans child. We refer to them as children because they are our children. And, some people will say, like, your children never grow up. They won't. They'll always be my kids. They'll always be my children. But my child is an adult and has the right to make decisions for himself. The history and current events underscored today the importance of remembering and learning. It's a stark reminder of the dangers of intolerance and misinformation. It highlights the resiliency of the LGBT community and the ongoing struggle for recognition, understanding, and acceptance. My final note tonight, because I am going to make this short just because the last recording was difficult and this one is kind of doing a little blinky thing up there at the top, so I'm really hoping this records correctly. Um, the final note that we wanted to speak to tonight was the danger of silence. The Nazi regime relied on the silence and complicity of those who did not speak out against the persecution of the LGBTQ plus community. It is just as important, if not more important today, more important to remember that silence in the face of injustice is just as harmful as the injustice itself. We cannot be silent. We cannot be quiet. We cannot quietly watch as our children and our siblings of humanity are erased. By using our voices to condemn anti-trans policies and hate speech, we help protect the rights and dignity of all individuals. Everybody. Now, I had said at the beginning of the other show, and I didn't include this in this piece either. I've been talking about it for a couple of weeks now. I'm sorry, my nose is itching like crazy. I am going out for surgery on the 22nd, on Wednesday. And I hope, I hope that Jenni and I return on June 23rd live. We might try beforehand. We may not. I may put out old episodes that maybe we just didn't get as big a crowd those nights. So I just don't feel like a lot of people saw them. So I may put some of those slower ones out there, not slower, but those smaller ones out there while I'm gone. I'm not sure yet. I haven't decided. Because I did same thing for Lyrical Lights. I didn't get any extra recordings done for that show either. So I may have other recordings, past recordings, may go back out there just to kind of share that information again. But if not, the plan is hopefully to tentatively be back by the 23rd of June. I am disappointed. I had planned out episodes while I was gone, hopefully to pre-record that we just didn't get to because there's just been a lot on my plate and a lot on Jenni's plate in the last week or so. And I had wanted to cover a special on Father about Papa Bears. I had wanted to do a special on trans pride for Pride Month and being trans moms, right? Moms of trans kids, me and Jenni. And so we're hoping, I think if I come back the 23rd, we should be able to squeeze in, I think this one, at least one episode into June. I don't know if we'll try and do the Pride and the Papa Bear together or if we'll just try that, but I'm thinking that's probably the material that we will return with, is trying to like pick up and honor Papa Bears. And it also goes into like who we can schedule to get on as guests and so forth. So and again, that is tentative. My recovery is 8 to 12 weeks, and I'm looking at 5 weeks out returning. And so I've got several people who are kind of like, is that a little early? And it could be. I don't know. I will put something out here. I will send out invites for the first one back live. I probably won't be putting invites out for the pre-recorded old episodes if I put them out there. So if you want to watch them, if you haven't seen them, show up on Sunday nights. They'll drop at 7 o'clock. Is when I'm planning to like just land them on the same hour. So if you want to watch them again, share them, whatever you need to do. And then if there are resources that went with those episodes, yeah, I'm not sure if I'll be able. It just depends on my clarity. Understand I'm having 5 procedures on my abdomen, so I just don't know how heavily medicated I will be to get the resources pasted into the right places. Forgive me. If you watch something that I pre-record and put out there and you need resources, do DM me. And it may not be immediate that I can get back to you, but as soon as I can, I will try and provide that information. So with that being said, guys, I'm going to close this out. It will but when I put it out there, it will be a shorter version this evening. I do appreciate all of you that showed up that tried to watch. I don't know what was going on with my internet connection. I am super sorry. Thank you for joining me this evening. Look forward to returning. I really, really do. And hopefully by then, everybody will have everything straight. StreamYard, Jenny, myself, we'll all be back to normal. Maybe. What is normal? Anywho, I hope you all have a great rest of May. I hope you have a fantastic start to June. To all of my LGBT community out there, happy Pride. Please be safe. And for the supporters out there, raise your voice. We need every voice right now. Every voice. Every single voice. Please. With that being said, thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you hopefully at the end of June. Good night. Thank you. See y'all soon.